Today we are starting with a method of costing, that is contract costing. This is one of the easiest and very interesting topics of your syllabus. It relates little bit with the final accounts of any entity. Here it will be of a company which is having contracts with the people. Something like a construction company. So we'll talk in lots of detail. Today is lots of concepts which will be followed by questions later on. You can start writing along with me. Applicability of contract costing. Where this contract costing is applicable. Applicability of contract costing. Every method applies in a specific industry. So where this contract costing is applicable is what you are writing. It applies in the industries where there is involvement of long-term contracts. That is, the contracts which get fulfilled or completed, you can say, in more than one accounting period. Broadly, contract represents longer version of the job. Now try to understand the real problem under contract costing. Let us say I am a contractor. I am a civil engineer who is making buildings. A building will get created in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. Not in less than 1 year. Rarely there will be a building created in less than 1 year. So it's a long-term contract. Now I take one example throughout the topic. I am going to construct a building in 7 years. And I am going to get 100 crore rupees for it. Posh building, hotel with all rooms filled with everything. Create interiors also, toilets also, everything I'll create. Within 7 years I'll do it, and after 7 years I will get contract price 100 crore. Now question arises, in my books of accounts, who am I? Contractor. In contractor's books of account, when should 100 crore be treated as a revenue? That is a question mark. The profit that I am earning, should I book it in first year? Or should I wait till completion of 7th year? Or partly in every year from first year? In 7 years, 1/7 or something else? That is a question mark we are going to study in this topic. How the revenue recognition is to be done in the books of contractor who is doing a contract which will be completed in more than one accounting period. That is the only question to be responded in this topic. So it is primarily making final accounts of contractor and deciding what portion of profit should be taken to profit and loss account. Under costing, we call it costing P&L account. So this is the question that we'll answer in this topic. Is it genuine to put all the profit in first year and then declare dividends out of it? Not at all. Because profit is not at all earned in first year. First year only 5-10% work is done. So how can you create all the profit in the P&L and then distribute dividend also? Not justified. No accounting will help you reach this conclusion. Should I wait till 7th year? There used to be a method called completed contract method. It said exactly same. Wait till 7th year to recognize any profit or loss. But that method is now not acceptable. Not acceptable for long-term contracts. There is an accounting standard AS7. Accounting standard 7 on construction contracts. It says completed contract method should not be applied. So only third thing is possible, which is using percentage of completion method, which is allowed under AS7. Percentage of completion method. The more work you do, the more profit you can take to the costing P&L in the particular year. So there is a proper way of doing it, which you will understand in the contract costing topic. Let us write further. The real issue to be handled is profit recognition in various accounting periods. Correct. Contract costing is also termed as another name of contract costing, terminal costing. Terminal costing. Under contract costing, we prepare a special account called contract account, in which all expenses are put on debit side and all revenues are put on credit side. It is similar to the income statement that we prepare. On debit side, all the expenses, even opening stocks. On credit side, all the revenues, even the closing stocks. Now from there we'll get something called notional profit, which we'll analyze further to find what amount should be taken to costing P&L. We'll reach there. Before we reach there, I'd like to discuss with you terms related to contract costing. Some new terms are there which are very important for your understanding. So try to get each of that term correctly in your mind. So make a heading there. Few terms used in contract costing. few terms used in contract costing. Number one, retention money. Now, retention money is a very important concept. Even in small contracts, in bigger contracts or long-term contracts, it becomes even more important. Now, try to understand for a small contract. Let us say I have to get some plumbing jobs at my house. 4 or 5 things are to be corrected. So I call upon a plumber. You don't easily get these people. So I keep on calling him 2-3 days. Then he comes in the afternoon one day. He asks me what are the jobs to be done. I tell him, number 1, some tap is to be corrected. Number 2, some washer is to be corrected. Number 3, water tank is to be corrected. Number 4, something else. Number 5, something else. I tell him 5 jobs. He says, okay, 200 per job, 1000 is your bill, which I can do. I say, okay, do it. He keeps doing the work till late evening. He is able to correct 3 out of 5 jobs. 3 out of 5 jobs. In the evening, he asked me for some money. Very importantly, he has done the job of 600 rupees. I should not give him 600 rupees. If I give him 600, he may not come for balance 400 work. So my work will be not done because there are small jobs left. I should pay him, let's say, 300 or maximum 400. He has done the job of 600. I should pay him 300. I'll say balance will be paid to you once the balance part of the contract is done. This 50% or whatever percentage I am keeping with me is called retention money. Why I am keeping it? To safeguard my interest for completion of contract. If I pay him fully, he may not return next day at all. Now, same applies in the huge contract of 100 crores for 7 years. In 4 years, whatever work I have done, if they pay me everything and I get a better contract of 1000 crores, I may not complete this contract. There is some penalty, they will sue me. Let's go to court, wait there for 20 years. So that is not correct way of doing. Better is, if in 4 years I have done the work of 60 crore, they should pay me 40 crore only. The work I have done, they will retain some money, which is called retention money. And retention money is not a TDS type of thing. It is not a discount type of thing. It is something which will be paid on ultimate completion of contract. You are just retaining it so that you can check at the end of contract everything is satisfactorily done and then the money will be released to you. In all big contracts, it is happening there. So let us write there retention money. Normally, the contractor does not get the full payment of the work done and the contractee retains some amount to be paid on ultimate completion of contract. This amount is known as retention money. Second term, work in progress. Two types: certified work, uncertified work. Now try to understand a story. He tells me whatever is work completed, I will pay you 60% of the same, having 40% retention clause. 40% retention, 60% he will pay me. I am going to do the work there. I am doing work. Let us say I am able to do 10 crore work. He will retain 4 crore and pay 6 crore. That is what is going to happen. Now, I can be very, very handsome to tell him I have done the work of 15 crore. He will ask me how much work you have done. I tell him 15 crore. Now, 15 into 60% becomes 9 crore. This way, he will be paying me 9 crore. Actually, I have done only 10 crore. So, I can be chent enough. He will not help me do that. What will happen? He will counter check how much work I have done. How will he counter check? He will appoint an expert on his behalf. A civil engineer on his behalf will be appointed. Who will come here? I tell him I have done the work of 15 crore. He will check this. He will say no, it's 10 crore. So I'll be caught if I'm doing mischief. So what is happening? His engineer is coming to the site where I'm doing the work and confirming how much work I have done. He'll make a certificate and after signing give it to me. You have done work of 10 crore. He'll give a copy to contractee also that he has done 10 crore work. So what I'm doing the concept of certification. The amount for which he has issued certificate is called value of certified work. Value of work certified. But imagine again, my balance sheet date is 31st March. His engineer comes to me not on 31st March. It's not a very easy job that in 1 second he will check and say that it's 10 crore. No, it will take him 5 days, 10 days. He comes on 20th March, starts checking. I made this much wall on 20th March. He counts it, measures it, values it, put in the certificate. He goes further. By the end of 31st March, I have completed this wall and even linter is complete. Now, he has not accounted for that part because he checked this room on 20th March. On 31st March, he will not come back here and start measurement again because he will take some days to complete the work. So, in last 10-11 days, whatever work is done, it is not in the certificate. It is called uncertified work. This is uncertified work. Uncertified is the work which I have done, contractor has done, but is not reported in the certificate of the independent engineer. In my books, I cannot include profit in this because contractee does not agree to this work having been done. This must be strictly taken at cost. In certified work, it is cost plus profit. In uncertified work, it is only cost, strictly cost. Certified work is valued as a percentage of contract price, which includes profit. Uncertified work should strictly be taken at cost only. So you can write there WIP comprises the aggregate of work certified and work uncertified. The work certified can be taken as a percentage of contract price and hence include the profit, whereas uncertified work must strictly be valued at cost. Because uncertified is something which contractee is not agreeing to having been done. Still I want to consider it, I can consider, but it will be considered strictly at cost. This is work in progress. Third term, subcontract. My main contract is to make a building with the contractee. I am civil engineer, architect, expert in creating buildings, in interior designing, but I am not expert in electrical work, in wooden work, in many other specialized tasks. Either I will have a department in my company for these, or otherwise I will give this work on subcontract basis to some other contractors. For those subcontracts, I will be contractee, they will be contractor. I will be paying them something. So subcontract cost is something that I will have to charge in the debit side of my contract account. So you can understand my position. I am the contractee in those subcontracts. So you can write there, the person who is assigned a contract may get a portion of it done through a subcontract. The subcontract cost should be put on the debit side of the contract account in books of contractor. Only my books you are understanding. In my books, on debit side of contract account will charge that subcontract cost. Number 4. Notional profit. Notional profit. The balancing figure in contract account is termed as notional profit. It is not called net profit, gross profit, it is called notional profit. And it is to be dealt further in the same contract account extension. I'll make a contract account, a sample contract account that will help you understand various more terms and the notional profit and its treatment. So I make a contract account now. You must make it along with me. This contract account will have 4 columns, particulars amount, particulars amount. In some bigger contracts, it can be amount in thousands or lakhs even. Otherwise, amount is in rupees, simple rupees. This is debit side, this is credit side, just like a P&L account. Let us put some items here. If it is a running contract, there will be opening items also. In first year, they will not be there. In subsequent years, there will be 2 opening WIP. Whatever was closing WIP last year will be opening WIP this year. In first year, it will not be there. 2 opening to opening material at site. If any. Then 2 materials issued. Normally what is happening, I am having one common godown. For all contracts, I buy material there and then some of that is issued to each contract. For each contract, I am making a separate contract account. For my X building that I am creating, this is a contract account. So material issued to that will be there. If any direct material is directly purchased at that site, that can also come here. So 2 materials directly purchased at a site. Whatever I am issued from the store or whatever is directly purchased there, both will come. 2 labor costs, all on accrual basis. Add outstanding labor minus prepaid labor, all will be adjusted there. 2 other costs, overheads, etc. All other cash cost, if it is there, will also be on debit side of this. The important thing is next one. 2 depreciation on plant. Now very important, you will find in some books, they don't charge depreciation, they put opening plant in debit side, closing plant on credit side. That is also correct, there is no problem. But I am doing like P&L account. In P&L account, we never put fixed asset opening closing. We put only depreciation. Moreover, if there is any purchase or sale of plant during the year, they will have to put everything. If you are putting opening closing balance, you will have to put everything like purchase, sale, profit on sale, loss on sale. In our case, nothing to be put. Only depreciation. No purchase, no sale, no profit on sale, no loss on sale. Because they will go to costing P&L. They will not go to the contract account. So contract account, I am recommending you put only depreciation. Make a habit of this. Don't change it question by question or book by book. In this book, this is no. Make sure your concept is clear. Your concept should be charge depreciation on the debit side. To subcontract cost. I put most of the items here. I am going on to credit side now. Very, very important to follow. On credit side, by opening WIP reserve, if any. I'll explain what is WIP reserve once this contract account is complete. So you'll get to know from closing. Easily you'll be able to understand. Very important, the major revenue. The major revenue here, by closing WIP. By closing WIP. It will always be classified into two parts. A part, work certified. B part, work uncertified. And work uncertified at cost. Work certified will be percentage of contract price, includes profit. Uncertified is strictly at cost. By closing material at site. By costing P&L material lost at cost. If there is any loss of material, I will be putting here by costing P&L. It is a normal loss which will be taken there. Now balancing figure. To notional profit, if it comes on credit side, by notional loss. Obviously one of these will exist. Contract account is not complete. It will be extended. Like after P&L, we extend to P&L appropriation. This is also extended further. Most important is the extension. And extension takes place if it is notional profit. If it is loss, it is taken to costing P&L. Matter is over. I can write here in bracket, taken to costing P&L. So no extension if there is notional loss. If it is notional profit, by notional profit, this comes here. To costing P&L. To WIP reserve. As per rules. This is important. As per rules, some amount of the notional profit is to be taken to costing P&L and balancing figure will be WIP reserve. Now try to understand what is WIP reserve. Is it technically a reserve? No, it is provision. It is like stock reserve. It is a provision on the value of WIP. Out of WIP, we have earned something in notional profit. Out of that notional profit, something is taken to costing P&L, balance goes to WIP reserve. Very important to understand how you get costing P&L amount as per the rules. If there is 1 lakh notional profit, if 90,000 is taken to costing P&L, 10,000 will be WIP reserve, which is provision against WIP value that we created in this credit side, this WIP. Again, this WIP, this is closing WIP reserve. I must mention for your understanding, this is closing WIP reserve. This closing WIP reserve next year will become opening WIP reserve. This becomes opening WIP next year. This is opening WIP next year, and this is opening WIP reserve of next year, which will be taken on debit and credit side respectively in the contract account. Now, last thing for the day to understand is rules to determine what amount will be taken to costing P&L. So, make a heading there. Rules to determine profits to be taken to costing P&L account. Rule 1. There are 4 rules in all, which you'll get in detail today. The 4th rule, little bit you'll get today, more details you'll get in lectures to follow. Rule 1. When does this rule apply? When contract completion is less than 25%. Now remember one thing, completion means certified work. That percentage on which both the parties are agreed upon that this work has been done. His engineer gave me certificate for whatever is contract completion. Means in 100 crore contract, 24 crore contract was certified and 2 crore was uncertified. Does this fall in clause 1, rule 1 or rule 2? It falls in rule 1 because 24% completion is there, not 26, because uncertified should not be counted for the purpose of contract completion. If it is less than 25%, then this first rule will apply. What is the rule? No profit taken to costing P&L. Means work done is very less, all profit should go to WIP reserve. None of the profit should be taken to costing P&L. Rule 2. When contract completion is 25% or more, but less than 50%. Formula applied: 1/3 into notional profit multiplied by progress payment ratio. One by 3 into notional profit into progress payment ratio. And what is progress payment ratio? It is reverse of retention ratio. Progress payment ratio, cash received divided by work certified. So once condition is fulfilled, the completion is more than 25%, even at exact 25%. 25% or more, but less than 50%. At exact 50%, rule 3 will apply. So this is a formula to be applied. This gives me profit taken to P&L. Rule 3. When contract completion is 50% or more, but contract is not near completion. Now, near completion they define around 80% or more. Now, few authors define it at 90%, but some people define it around 80%. It should not be near completion. Near completion can be defined differently by different authors, but the term should be followed, near completion. Then formula applied. Same formula that I wrote earlier, instead of 1 by 3, it is 2 by 3. 2 by 3 into notional profit into progress payment ratio. Which is cash received by work certified. Must define it in the exam. Don't leave it like progress payment ratio. Must define it. Profit taken to costing P&L. Rule 4. When contract is near completion, one of the following formulas can be used by the contractor as per their policy. I will still give priority to the first formula, but there are multiple formulas given for this purpose. Number 1, estimated profit into cash received divided by contract price. Estimated profit multiplied by work certified divided by contract price. estimated profit multiplied by cost till date divide by estimated total cost. Number 4, estimated profit into cost till date divide by estimated total cost multiplied by progress payment ratio. If estimated profit cannot be computed, then notional profit into work certified divided by contract price. Now question arises, what is estimated profit? Computation of estimated profit. When the contract is near completion, we need to calculate estimated profit, which is when the contract will be completed, what is the estimated profit on the contract. So it is computed as contract price minus estimated total cost. Contract price is already known. Estimated total cost we need to estimate. Now estimated total cost can be written as cost incurred till date plus estimated further cost. So I can write estimated profit as contract price for which a sure figure is known, the price which you determined at the beginning of the contract in the contract. Contract price minus cost incurred till date and estimated further cost. That makes the estimated profit. Another way of calculating in detailed questions, prepare memorandum contract account. To determine estimated profit, what we are doing, we are preparing memorandum contract account. Now, how does memorandum contract account look like? It is just like contract account. Just like contract account. By contractee. This is contract price on credit side. No closing WIP will come in memorandum contract. 2. Opening WIP. 2. Opening material at site. 2. Material issued. 2. Material directly purchased. 2. Labor cost. 2. Overhead. 2. Depreciation. further expenditure. By closing material at site at end of contract, by abnormal loss of material if any, what I get? To estimated profit. Now this will be used when there is a proper question having all future expenditure given separately with present expenditure, then this particular format can be used. Points to be remembered there. If you are making the big format, remember outstanding cost, prepaid expense, material at site. At extreme end, estimated will be considered and no impact of intermediate period items will be taken in memorandum contract. Let me explain with example. There is a contract of 7 years. I am preparing accounts at end of 6th year. The question gives me prepaid at the end of 6th year also and estimated prepaid at the end of 7th year also. The 6th year end prepaid will be used in contract account. 7th year end prepaid will be used in memorandum contract account. The material at site at the end of 6th year will be used in contract account. Material at the end of 7th year will be used in memorandum contract account. If no material, no prepaid, no outstanding is given at the end of 7th year, they will be deemed to be zero. 6th year end figures will not be used in memorandum contract. 6th year end figures are to be used for calculation of notional profit in contract account. So important thing is these three items: prepaid, outstanding, material at site. At the end of 7th year, estimated figures will be used in memorandum contract, and actual figures at the end of 6th year will not be used in memorandum contract. They will be used only in contract account to compute notional profit. They are the points to take care of while doing any calculation of estimated profit. Another point: no closing WIP in memorandum contract. Instead of that, there is contract price which is coming by contractee. Whereas in contract account, the contract price does not come. By closing WIP comes. They are the major differences that you should be noting while making memorandum contract as compared to contract account. Contract escalation clause. Now, before you understand this clause, there are two types of contracts. Types of contracts. Fixed price contracts, cost plus contracts. Now try to understand the features of both of these. Fixed price contract is when, as a contractor, I have been promised a particular amount after completion of the jobs. Let us say I am going to make a building within 7 years and they have promised me they will pay me rupees 100 crore. The amount is fixed, the consideration is fixed. Due to this 100 crore being a fixed amount, it is called fixed price contract. So in my example, I am contractor. In my books, you are doing everything. So contract price have been defined at rupees 100 crore. Now my contract is going to be completed within 7 years. Now in those 7 years, the cost of inputs can change. I am going to use cement, bricks, reta, sand, labor, many other items. The cost of these items will get inflated for sure. When I quoted 100 crore, I considered my cost using normal inflation and my profit margin. That is aggregate which created 100 crore, which I quoted to them and they accepted also. Now, if there is abnormal inflation, I will get loss on the contract. I thought 20% inflation in all material as well as labor. And the prices, instead of rising by 20% per annum, they double. Obviously, the project will not remain viable for me. I will be bankrupt while doing the project. My cost will be more than 100 crore. So it is not in my favor. But again, it is beyond my prediction, any abnormal increase in prices of inputs, be it material, be it labor, anything. Now, in such a case, when there is abnormal inflation, abnormal rise in cost of material and labor, the savior is escalation clause. Escalation clause helps me to reduce the losses caused by inflation. Escalation clause says if there is inflation beyond a particular percentage, some part of that inflation will be shared by contractee by giving me escalation claim. He will give me only a portion of abnormal inflation. I don't say that he will compensate me totally and I will be getting profits that I thought otherwise. No. He'll give me some part of that inflation in the form of escalation claim. What is second category of contract? Cost plus contract. Contract says whatever cost I incur, they will give me, compensate me that cost plus a profit margin. Let us say 30% on cost. They give me cost plus a percentage on cost. Now, does inflation make me a victim in this case? Answer is not at all. If there is inflation, there will be higher cost and I'll enjoy higher profit. I don't mind inflation. I love to have inflation in this case. So in cost plus contract, no concept of escalation clause, as inflation does not disturb profitability of contractor. This can include escalation clause. So whenever we are looking at fixed price contract, if there is an escalation clause, we'll have to make certain computations about the claim to be taken by contractor from contractee in addition to the fixed contract price. That extra claim is known as escalation claim. That is what we are studying in this topic. Write a little bit there. The concept of escalation claim arises when in a fixed price contract there is higher than the normal inflation in the cost of various inputs like material, labor, etc. The contractee has to compensate a portion of excessive or abnormal inflation to the contractor by paying an additional amount over and above the fixed contract price termed as escalation claim. Termed as escalation claim. Note, very important note. The claim is for increase in prices only and will not include cost increasing due to inefficiency of the contractor. That is, change in quantities of material or labor hours shall not be considered to calculate the escalation claim. Maximum claim for materials is equal to standard quantity into difference in rates. Now, if there is inflation in 3 materials and deflation in 1, we must take net. 3 inflations added, 1 deflation deducted. The net will be asked for as a claim. We should give the benefit of deflation also. We should take overall net inflation. Similarly, for labor, standard hours multiplied by difference in rate per hour. There are different types of labor. There is deflation in something, will be taken net. So net inflation is what you can claim. The change in quantity should not be considered. They planned 1000 bags of cement. They are actually consuming 1500. The extra 500 they are consuming will not give inflation on that. Even if they consumed 900 bags, we will consider 1000 bags only standard quantity. Standard quantity into difference in rates. That will give us the inflation we can talk of. The actual cost and budgeted cost will be different due to two reasons: price as well as usage. The usage part is not being considered here. We are considering only on standard quantity the difference in rates. The actual quantity being different, we are not considering at all. That is where our variance analysis and escalation claim, they are different. Reaching illustration 7 of ICI module, you are given one agreed contract price ₹17,50,000. You are given standards and actuals, wages also, materials also, and based on that they are claiming final price, claiming 17,73,600, implying claiming 23,600 escalation claim. We have to check, is this justified? I'll first make calculation for this 17,73,600. How did he get the figure? What he have probably done, he compared standard cost with actual cost and claimed all the difference. We can check it. Let us check. For material A, B, C, first compute all standard cost, then all actual cost. Now standard cost 5,000 into 50, 3,500 into 80, 2,500 into 60. Wages XYZ 2,000 into 70, 2,500 into 75, 3,000 into 65. I want to get the total of this. 5,000 into 50. This is 2,50,000. 3,500 into 80. 2,80,000. 2,500 into 60. 1,50,000. 1,40,000. 2,500 into 75. 187500. 3,000 into 65. 1,95,000. So 12,02500. 12,02,500. And actuals 5,050 into 48, 3450 into 79, 2600 into 66, 2100 into 72, 2450 into 75, 3100 into 66. I want to get total of this. 5050 into 48, 242400. 3450 into 79, 272550. 2600 into 66, 171600. 2100 into 72, 151200. 2450 into 75, 183750. 3100 into 66, 2,04,600. The total of this I am getting 1226100. Difference 1202500 is 23,600 that he is claiming. So what he has claimed is difference between standard cost and actual cost. I hope you are getting the error there. The error is computing actual on the basis of actual quantity. This is wrong. They are allowed to get escalation claim based on standard quantity into difference in rate. This is not justified. Correct computation of escalation claim. Correct computation of escalation claim. Standard quantity, in case of labor it is hours multiplied by difference in rates. If it is inflation, I'll make it plus. If it is deflation, I will deduct. I'll put in minus. So I put all the 6 things one by one. This is A, B, C, X, Y, Z. I'll compute and then get the total of these. So what I'm doing there, standard quantity 5,000, 3,500, 2,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 multiplied by difference in rates. Now in material A there is deflation, 48 minus 50. This becomes minus 2 means minus 10,000. The rates have declined. What we were doing earlier, we were multiplying 48 with 5050. That is not justified. 5050 does not come into picture at all. Escalation clause, standard quantity into difference in rate. Actual quantity does not come into picture at all. It comes in variance analysis. We are not doing variance analysis. We are doing the escalation claim computation. 3,500 into, again there is reduction. 79 minus 80 minus 3,500. There will be benefit of these negative. If all net is negative, then escalation claim is 0. Escalation claim should not be negative. Contract prices not to be reduced. If there is net deflation, no escalation claim will be put up. Now here is 6 rupees increase. 66 minus 60. 6 means positive 15,000. There is again increase 72 minus 72 rupees increase 4,000. No increase decrease. Nil. 1 increase. total 8500 I am getting. Justified escalation claim rupees 8500 only, and hence total claim should be 17,50,000 plus 8500, 1758500. This is the answer. What they have computed, I am not saying that always you will be getting lesser claim. You might be having more claim. If quantities are consumed less in actual, you would have got lesser claim in the first calculation that we did. That is not a correct calculation at all. When you consider actual quantity, escalation claim is wrong. Simple. Quantity has to be standard only, multiplied by difference in rates. That makes, in this case, 8500 claim, 23,600 is wrong claim, and 1758500 is total contract price that you should ask for. Now, going little further in the escalation clause, there is no question like this in your institute module, but I am just telling you how you calculate the escalation claim based on a clause which is given. I take an example. The clause reads like this: in case the prices of inputs increase by more than 8%, then the contractee shall bear %60 of price increase beyond 8%. We'll be given some data with some examples I'll explain, but before I explain it, I'll give you some steps that you can use to calculate the escalation claim that you can talk of. Now, if you understand this carefully, in this language, 8% is a normal expected inflation. If inflation is 8% or less, no claim. Anything beyond 8% is called abnormal or excessive inflation. All excessive inflation is not to be borne by contractee. Only 60% proportionate share will be borne by contractee. We need to have amounts of cost incurred on various inputs. On every input like material, labor, we'll be applying this separately and then getting the claim there. You can write along with me steps which can be applied in this situation. That can be applied to find escalation claim based on a given clause. It is not based on the quantities or standard quantity or rates given. Step 1. Determine rate of normal inflation. In my example, it is 8%. Step 2. Determine actual rate of inflation. It will be given to you. Normal, then actual. Step 3. Calculate rate of abnormal or excessive inflation. Step 2 minus step 1. Keep in mind, if 1 is more than 2, there is no excessive inflation, no question of escalation in that case. Escalation clause will not apply in that case. Step 4. Determine proportion of excessive inflation to be borne by contractee from escalation clause. In my clause, in my example, it is 60%. Step 5. Compute the applicable proportionate rate for abnormal inflation. Step 3 into step 4. Whatever is abnormal inflation multiplied by, in my example, 60%. Whatever is proportion which is to be borne by contractee. That is step 5. Step 6. Compute amount of inflation. It is simple. Cost incurred multiplied by rate divided by 100 plus rate. Which rate? Actual rate of inflation. This rate which we took in second step. Obviously, if spending has been done, it includes the inflation. So, if it is 20%, 20 by 120 will give you amount of inflation. Step 7 is last step. Compute escalation claim amount as step 6, that is amount of inflation, multiplied by step 5 divided by step 2. It does not need rectification. If you can understand, it is very simple. Let us say if it was 20% inflation rate, normal was 8% in my example, 12% is abnormal, and 60% he is going to share. 7.2% he is going to share out of total inflation 20% multiplied by amount of inflation. So simple thing I am doing in my calculation. I will do 2-3 examples for you, but try to understand. If you can apply the 7 steps, you can easily get the escalation claim. Making some examples to compute escalation claim. I'll make a few columns in a tabular form which will help you understand this. I'll take some different examples and things will be done. I first assume a data actual cost rupees 1 lakh, actual inflation rate different in every example I will take. My basic clause is same. Normal rate of inflation 8% and I had contractee share 60% of excessive inflation. Now I'll keep on changing actual inflation rate and you will find our escalation claim will be different. Now I create a table, case number. In a tabular form, multiple examples I am going to make. Normal rate, actual rate I am going to change in every example. 3 examples I will make. In every example different actual rate. If I get actual and normal, I can get abnormal rate by deducting. Then percentage for contractee 60% every time. Proportion relevant, by multiplying abnormal rate and percentage for contractee 60%, I will be getting the proportion which is relevant. Amount of inflation, all the steps I have incorporated in this table and then I get claim. Let's take case 1. Case 1. Let us say normal rate is 8%. It's not there, it's in the clause. It's not assumed, it is there in clause. Let us say actual rate is 20%. This example I took earlier. Abnormal 12%, 60%, 7.2%. Amount of inflation 1 lakh into 20 by 120. 20 by 120. Once you compute, you get 16,666.67. Now this claim will be 16,666.67 multiplied by 7.2 divided by 20. That will give me some answer there. You need to calculate there. 16,666.67 into 7.2 divided by 20. It is 6,000. So my claim in this case will be 6,000. So you need to do these exercises. Once you understand it, it is not difficult. Second example. Normal rate remains same because my clause is same. Let us say actual rate is 18%. What is abnormal rate? 10%, 60%, 6%. They are not difficult. Once you apply yourself on this again and again, it will become simple. 1 lakh into 18 by 118. They are all logical things. Once you apply, you get 15,254 point something something. 1 lakh into 18 divided by 118. 15,254.24. On this figure, I apply what? Apply your mind here. 15,254.24 multiplied by what? Multiplied by 6 out of 18. 6% he is bearing out of total inflation of 18%. 15,254.24 6 by 18. I'm getting is 5084.75. I hope this one is also clear. Let's do one more, last. Third example. 8%, let us say there is huge inflation, doubling, 100% inflation. 92%, 60%, this becomes 55.2%, 1 lakh into 100 by 200, 50,000 is inflation. On 50,000, 55.2 out of 100. What I am getting is 27,600. So when the inflation was rupees 50,000, 27,600 is coming as an escalation claim. So this is the application of clause when it is given. There was no question on this in your study material. I am still giving you this concept so that you can understand the same. I hope it is clear. I am dealing with few small concepts which are not dealt in your institute study material. Still they are relevant for contract costing. One of them is making of contractee account, and second is disclosure of WIP in the balance sheet of a contractor. So first is making of contractee account. If you understand the journal entries better, the ledger can be easily made. Now, in all years, contractor shall make entry for receiving progress payments as bank account debited to contractee account. Every year, whatever is the work certified, a pre-decided percentage of that will be received. The entry will be bank to contractee account. No other entry related to contractee account. In last year, on completion of contract, entry shall be contractee account debited to contract account. What is the amount of this entry? Contract price. At total contract price, the entry is passed, and after that you receive the progress pay, the retention money. Retention money receipt, same entry, bank to contractee. Then receive the retention money. Entry is bank account debited to contractee account. Now, very simple, contractee account will be closed once the retention money is also received. So every year you are passing entry bank to contractee, bank to contractee, bank to contractee. If I ask you a simple question, in the books of contractor, in the trial balance, what is the nature of balance of contractee, debit or credit? Every year the balance is credit, because contractee account is never debited till the completion of contract. Bank to contractee, contractee account is credited every year, and the balance keeps on increasing. The total progress payment received is shown in the trial balance, has to go to balance sheet also. From this concept arises another concept related to disclosure of WIP in balance sheet. Now before I do that, I can show you a contractee account. Contractee account. From the year 1 itself, they will start receiving progress payment. Year 1, by bank, carry down. Year 2, brought down by bank, increases. The aggregate is carried down now. Year 3, brought down by bank. Let's say in year 3, contract is completed. To contract, this is contract price. By bank, this is retention money. This is progress payment of third year. This is progress payment of second year. Progress payment of first year. And the account is closed. This is how contractee account looks like in 3 years of its contract. Now I show you one last thing. Disclosure of work in progress in balance sheet of contractor. We put work certified, add work uncertified, what I am getting is called gross WIP, less WIP reserve. What I get? Net WIP less advance received from contractee. Every year, whatever was credit balance of contractee account, it is being termed as advance received from contractee. Somebody asked me, sir, what will happen in last year? Because last year there is no balance left for contractee account. In last year there will be no WIP. Once contract is complete, there is no work in progress. So last year this will not affect. Till last year, every year there was advance received. The money received as progress payment in aggregate is termed as advance received from contract. It is to be deducted. It is not shown in liability side. Instead, it is deducted from WIP. Now, after this balancing figure, you get amount of WIP to be taken in outer column of balance sheet. So basically there are 3 stages to follow. Work certified, which is involving profit, work uncertified strictly at cost. When both are added, what I am getting is gross WIP less WIP reserve closing. I am getting net WIP minus advance received from contractee, which is credit balance of contractee account. After deducting, what I am getting is amount to be taken in outer column of balance sheet of contractor. They are small concept. They were prominently coming in exam long back, but recently they have not been asked. In module they are not carried. But you should be having knowledge of these small things. Making contractee account and this disclosure of WIP in the books of, in the balance sheet of contractor.